Converted Man here. S.J. Thomason put up a video why she's pro-life on abortion. That's nice. Look, it's a difficult topic. Abortion has two prongs to it. The legal question and then the ethical question. And the two are somewhat intertwined. There are good and bad arguments for abortion. Now, a long time ago, I covered different ethical systems, and depending on which ethical system you have, abortion still is something that you ultimately have to decide whether it's right or wrong, no matter what ethical system you have. Now, if you subscribe to divine command theory, then you're just at the whim of whatever the deity had said, apparently, or supposedly, or whatever you think the deity says to do, then that's what you must do or not do. So it seems that ethics doesn't really solve the problem of abortion in and of itself, because every ethical system, at least as far as I can determine, puts the choice upon you what you think is right or wrong to do. But then the question is, can you inflict your morality, your ethics upon someone else? And that's where the legality comes into play, because the only way in our society to do that is through the law. So, what do we do with it? My view is that until we have better science, unfortunately, I think that this is going to have to remain legal, because the ambiguity of different situations is one that is extraordinarily difficult to make laws about. It's like the law says this for this situation and this for this situation. It just becomes, the legal systems already has problems as enough as it is, but it becomes something that the doctors and the nurses and everyone else has to deal with, and the mother has to deal with, and so there's all sorts of issues. So I do think there are bad arguments for pro-abortion, and one of them that I hear a lot is, it's my body, my choice. Well, yes and no, because the embryo in your body isn't yours. It's yours plus whoever the guy happened to be. So it's not technically yours. I mean, yes, it's in your body, but it's kind of not yours. So I think that argument, well, of course, it's a slogan more than anything else, but I think that's a bad argument. I think that other bad arguments, of course, rely upon religion. And so for the non-religious, that's not going to convince them. Of course, the Christian argument's probably not going to convince a non-Christian. So those are bad arguments. The good argument would probably be something along the lines of, well, there's, again, just focusing on the legal stuff, because, again, the ethical stuff, that's up for grabs. The legal, we can't really make these precise laws that would cover every single situation. It's just too much to deal with. And so you have the question of, okay, well, what if the woman got raped? If we forced it that everybody by the law had to conceive the kid, then you're making that woman suffer through mental trauma of being reminded of that rape for the full time that she is carrying that child. And then she's going to have presumably put it up for adoption because she don't want to be reminded. And that's another trauma, because even though she doesn't want it in one aspect, hypothetically speaking, there is this, it's my kid, so I don't want to give it up, but I need to give it up. So there's another trauma caused by this. What if it's a result of incest? What if, and of course now this happens occasionally, not often, but brother and sister separated and didn't know, got together, had sex, had no idea they were brother and sister, and then later on find out, and she's pregnant. Now what? Well, the likelihood that that baby's going to be seriously deformed is pretty high. Is that a good thing? Probably not. What about cases where you know that the child is going to be born, let's say, without a brain? And there are cases where this happens, where children can be born without any brain at all. They don't survive very long. So if you know that's going to be the case, then why force that the baby's going to not live? You're just like, well, it lived for the few moments that it lived. At least it lived, So I think that those potential situations, as rare as they might be, make it that it has to be legal for now. Now it for the let's make it illegal argument. If that's your stance, and fair enough, people have that stance, then I would say, okay, but are you also supporting the science of, let's say, artificial wombs, so that the woman, upon finding out that she's pregnant and not wanting to carry this child to term, if we could safely transfer that embryo into an artificial womb, 100%, let's just say it's a high percent probability that it would work. It doesn't even have to be 100%. Let's just 80, 70, whatever. But it was relatively safe. Then research into that should be something that you're promoting and funding and advocating for. If not, then you're saying, well, I don't like that people are getting abortions, so therefore it's going to be illegal, but I'm not going to give them any alternatives. So I don't think it's very fair in that sense. Okay, so I don't particularly have, the only argument I have really is that for now it seems, because we don't have the scientific tools that could enable a woman to have another choice other than keep it, or put it up for, do the full term, put it up for adoption, or keep it. There's no third option where they don't have to carry it to term because, say, it's in an artificial womb or something like that. So they're, and they could sign something and say, I'm no longer legally responsible, blah, 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 whatever. Until we have something like that, I think that it has to stay legal. That's my viewpoint. Okay. Now, the arguments of whether or not it's a human and are we legalizing, it's murder. Well, it's murder if it's illegal. It's not murder if it's legal, no matter when it happens. So, if we said you can terminate the kid when it's 5 years old because it looked at you funny and that was the law, then that's not murder, it's killing. Now, we decided that's not a thing. When the child's in the woman still, it's okay. When it's out, then it's not okay. And then the question of, when in the pregnancy is and isn't okay is debated and still debatable. And there's merits to be had there, and those are arguments about definitions, perhaps, and when is this thing its own entity that now has sentience? And since that's ambiguous, then there's a problem. It's like, well, not what if somebody's in a coma? Do you just kill them because they don't have sentience? It's like, well, it's a little bit of a different situation, but if they have a living will, say they don't want to be on life support, then absolutely, you pull the plug. You don't have them on life support at all because that's what they desired. And sometimes families have to really go through a legal battle to turn off life support of somebody that didn't have a living will. So should that be a thing? I don't know. And of course it might be the case, so it's difficult because we say, well, are we sanctioning human death? And until we figure out when is it a human? Of course, people say, hey, it's a human the moment it's conceived. Is it though? I mean, really, where do you get that from? Well, if you get it from the Bible, I don't care. If you get it from religion, I don't care. If you get it from science, then I care. Okay, but it's not there yet. It's not defined yet. And so it's the difficult question. And again, where we're talking about legality, the however much of the percentages of people that are going to fall outside of that have to be considered. Now, my brother and I talked about this, and his objections were he doesn't like the idea that some percentage of people might be using this for contraceptive after the fact. I'm like, well, I doubt that it's a very big percentage, but if that's what the person's doing, I mean, maybe it should be like, how many times have you been here? Like, once is okay. Twice, now we're going to start asking some questions, maybe, or something like that. But it's not an easy answer. And yes, I do see chat, but I'm on my roll here, so I'll get to it in a moment. This happens sometimes with my get phlegm stuck in my throat. It's horrible. Okay, so what do we do? Well, you personally, if you don't want to do it, then you don't do it. If it's somebody then maybe you can talk them out of it. There is some care facilities that help single women, take care of them until they, come to term and everything, and help them somewhat afterwards and things like this. But and then of course you go, okay, well, adoption. So you make them carry it to term, and then they do adoption. But the adoption system then, well, where's your support and advocacy for adoption systems to be better than they are? Because a lot of them aren't very good. Many of them are run by religious organizations, and so maybe they don't adopt out to gay couples because they're religious, and they get to make the rules. There's certain loophole or things you have to jump through, hoops you have to jump through to adopt. So it's a difficult process no matter what. Sometimes kids get lost into foster homes. Sometimes kids are waiting in the adoption system in those foster homes for a long, long time. And sometimes they never get adopted. So why is that? How do we resolve that? How do we fix that? So you're dealing with one half of the problem, but not the other half. We want you to have the kid. What happens after that? We don't care. We don't want you to kill the kid. That's the main thing. It's like, well, where's all your advocacy for the adoption centers to become less religious, more secular, so that they will adopt out if you fulfill X, Y, and Z criteria? You're making X amount of money. You have this type of home. You have maybe you don't have violent tendencies or whatever, you take parenting class or whatever the requirement is, right? So if you're not advocating for that and the scientific research that would go into finding another alternative for women, then do you really have a foot to stand on when you say this needs to become illegal? I don't think so. Maybe you do, but I don't. Okay. So Trinity Solution has a bunch of things he wanted me to look at here in chat. Okay, so there's some quotes from some people. I don't care what these people said, because that's just a person. Doesn't matter what qualifications they have. Doesn't matter how many people said it. That doesn't make it true. So, moving on. Let's see. Another quote. Same thing. Don't care. Quoting people at me, just not going to sway me. These are bad arguments. So, okay. Again, so until it's agreed upon, let's say by the scientific community at large, I really don't care. You've got a handful of people that might agree with one position or whatever. And so how do we do, and it doesn't have to even be the scientific community per se, but we'd have to come to some sort of agreement, and that means we'd have to draw the line somewhere and say, this isn't they're not conscious beings, they are conscious beings, and the only way to figure that out, it would be through the methodology of science to determine when consciousness begins. And even then, you still have the problem of, yes, but what about X, Y, and Z place where the woman didn't know she was pregnant until past that point, or she was in this kind of emotional turmoil and uncertainty. Is like, well, and then she gets it sooner than she would have otherwise because she doesn't want to run out of time. Then later she regrets it because it was like, well, if she'd been allowed to wait, she would have thought her way out of it. And so by having a time limit on it, you actually cause the abortion to take place rather than not. So there's too many ambiguities in that right now. Okay. I don't need to. That's not my burden. Burden's on you if you want to find. It doesn't matter who says what. We would need a consensus on that, and it would have to be based on consciousness, I think. So I doesn't. They're from Scientific Desk again, yeah, but they're not peer reviewed papers, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. As far as the religious argument, especially from Christians, because I got to cover that, because that's my thing, right? Okay. In Numbers 5:11, Lord says to Moses, blah, 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 blah. So, okay, if a man's wife is unfaithful and, we're not really sure, the feelings of jealousy come over him, and he suspects his wife. We don't know if she actually did, but he suspects her, or if he's jealous and suspects her, doesn't matter. Then he takes his wife to the priest. And then he has to bring them, I don't know, money? I don't know, whatever. Oh, okay, bay leaf flour. Then it's a green offering, whatever, I don't know, whatever. Okay. Then the priest brings her to stand before the Lord. So take some holy water, not sure how you term water holy, but whatever, in a clay jar, and put some dust from the tabernacle floor into the water. on this. After the priest has the woman stand before the Lord, loosen her hair. I guess her hair has to be tight before they do this. Like, what if she has short hair? Well, they're supposed to have long hair, I guess. And place her in the hands of the remainder offering, the green offering for jealousy, with the husband holds the bitter water that brings a curse. And the priest shall put the woman under oath and say, okay, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So say this little magical chant, basically. And okay, so may the Lord cause you to become a curse, and your womb will miscarry, and your abdomen swell. May this water that brings a curse into your body, so abdomen swells and your womb miscarries. And then the woman has to say, she doesn't have a choice. She says, amen, so be it. And then the priests write down these curses on a scroll because that makes the magic work, I guess, and wash them off in the bitter water. And then he makes the woman drink the bitter water, and this water brings a curse, and a bitter suffering will enter her. Then they take the offering and they burn it, and they do all this other magical stuff. And so if the woman is not impure, she'll be cleared of guilt and will be able to have children. Okay, so if the woman didn't actually have an affair with somebody and she drinks this magical potion, she won't have a miscarriage. But if she did have an affair and she drinks this, then she will have a miscarriage. This is produced by the Lord. This is the Lord saying to Moses that this is how this works. So, I would challenge any Christian woman out there who knows with no doubt in her mind that she has been faithful to her husband to go, well, I guess the husband has to be jealous. I guess that's part of this. So make him a little bit jealous so that he suspects this, so we can get this test going, okay? Then go to the priest, make the potion, do all the things, and drink the dang thing. Now, if you haven't had an affair, then you shouldn't have a miscarriage. You should be able to drink this thing all day long. You should be able to swig this thing down left and right, and it shouldn't miscarriage you because you've been faithful. This would be a demonstrable test of something that God says will work. And if anybody that is faithful has a miscarriage after drinking this, then clearly either they did have an affair, even though they have absolute proof that they didn't, or this stuff is bullshit, because God apparently never changes, right, Christians? So this is testable, but nobody is going to do it. And I'm sure that apologists will have all sorts of excuses to offer as to why this isn't done anymore, or it's inappropriate to test this now, or you shouldn't test God, or it wouldn't work because God knows it's being tested, so, whatever, and this excuse and that excuse, and they wouldn't do it. Oh, it's for the Israelites. Okay, because now it matters who it's for. Fine, then you find an Israelite woman and you could conduct this test. Nobody will do it. I guarantee you won't find a single woman willing to drink disgusting water that's been, dust from the floor of a tabernacle. Basically, who knows what's on the floor? I'm guessing they didn't wash the floors that often, but this disgusting potion of stuff, they won't do it because they don't want the chance that they'll have a miscarriage. Now, maybe they'll have a miscarriage anyways, and it has nothing to do with the potion. So there's a problem there, but still. Poor Trinity didn't like me pointing out what the Bible says. Good. Well, there you go. There's the proof. All the proof you need that Christians don't like what their Bible says. S.J. Thomason doesn't bring this up at all. Not even a little. So Christian arguments are done. Okay? You have a magical potion that can give abortions, apparently, to women in the Bible. I don't want to hear your religious arguments anymore. I want to hear scientific arguments. I don't want you to quote from medical journals and texts. This is the... No, that's not good enough. And plus, it'd have to be shown that they're actually being used in scientific textbooks everywhere and all and stuff like this. What we have to determine is, when does consciousness begin? And even then, the problem is that because of certain situations that can come up where the woman gets pregnant under odd conditions, or the baby's not going to turn out well, or maybe having the baby will kill the woman, and we're going to say, no, you're forced to do it anyways because I don't like it. No, we need better arguments. For and against, granted, we need better arguments either way. So those are my thoughts. My challenge stands to any Israelite woman, any believer of God, to drink this thing. Let's see if it works. Huh? No, you're not going to do it? Okay. All right. That's all. Abortion sadly has to remain legal for now until we have the science to give women another choice. That's my view, and that's the way I would vote. And I do advocate for the scientific research to be done. I would like that to be done. I don't know who I would throw money at to do that, but if you know, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for listening.